Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Scott Gerber is with us. He's an ONU law professor. We're talking a little bit about Justice Clarence Thomas today. 30 years on the bench coming up this year. You know, I was thinking about it. You've written a book and you've written articles and opinions and that kind of thing. You were telling me, too, that you have a bit of a relationship, that you've known him and had some chats with him.
Yeah, the origins of the book are a shared interest in the Declaration of Independence, which my most recent piece about him discusses. But I was in graduate school writing my dissertation about the relationship between the Declaration and the Constitution. He was then nominated to the Supreme Court, and I just started following him because of that shared interest. And then after my first book was published, my editor suggested that we do a book about his jurisprudence, an early look. And so at the time, he didn't give interviews. So I would write him for his copies of his speeches and the like, and he'd send them. And when the book came out, I obviously sent him a copy. And then he invited me up to Chambers, and we spent 2 hours and 15 minutes alone together, just talking. And then I've been at other events where they've asked me to give some context to his career, and then he'd give the major remarks, obviously. And if I have a book come out that's unrelated to him, I still send him a copy of it, and he always writes me back. And he's just a very nice person. He really is.
A couple of other authors had mentioned that they felt he was one of maybe the top 5 justices of all time. And you agreed with that. What is it about his tenure so far that makes you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, my contribution in the piece that came out today was related to why I wrote the first book about him in the first place, and that was his commitment to the Declaration of Independence, which is our founding document as a nation, and it articulates our origins, purposes, and ideals as a nation: equality, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so given his position as one of only 9 members of the nation's highest court, he has a lot of authority to try to implement those principles into law, and he tries to do it, especially in civil rights cases. So to mention just his most famous area of law, racial preferences, which he opposes them because he believes that people should be judged as individuals and not as members of a group, because that's what the ideal of inherent equality in the Declaration dictates.
One of the terms I've learned from reading one of your opinions was liberal originalist and also conservative originalist. Tell me what those are and how they played a role in some of his major decisions.
Yeah, so liberal originalism is a theory that I articulated in graduate school, and that's just that you interpret the Constitution in light of the Lockean classical liberal, not today's Ted Kennedy type of egalitarian liberal, principles of the Declaration. And Justice Thomas does that in civil rights cases. Conservative originalism is more you try to understand the text of the constitutional provision in dispute by trying to understand what those who ratified that phrase in the Constitution understood it to mean at the time. So that's the difference. And the principal finding of my book is that he applies 2 different types of originalism. And most people forget that he's a liberal originalist on race.
For a legal scholar, it has to be fascinating to have someone sitting on the high court for 30 years that you can watch their career like that. Has he changed, do you feel, in the way that he's handled cases, or how much he has said about it, or how much opinion that he actually gives over the years?
I don't think he's changed much. He's very consistent. He's a very bright person, and he figured this out a long time ago. His influence is greater now because there are more and more people on the Supreme Court that share his views. And so in that sense, he's more influential in terms of he wins the case more than he used to. Most of the opinions that he's written in the past were separate opinions, concurring opinions, and dissent. And dissenting opinions, he writes more and more majority opinions today because there are more and more people on the court that have been influenced by him and agree with him.
This latest piece, a great one. Tell me where we can see that.
That's on Law and Liberty. It's a website, and they do a lot of interesting things. And because of my prior work on Justice Thomas, they asked if I'd write something for them, and so I did, and it was just published this morning. And so I hope people enjoy it. I've gotten good feedback already from it when I woke up, and people had read it already.
Yeah, it's an interesting read, and it's so nice to have that expertise right here in the area talking about it. Thank you so much for telling us about it. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Gerber. We'll be back after this.